Well, it's good, everybody. Hope you are having a wonderful week so far. Podcast time. John Acquaviva. What this guy has done in the industry is what a lot of people dream of doing. Starting in the early 90s, John and Richie Horton founded Plus 8 Recordings. John also started Definitive Recordings, both two record labels that have had some of the most iconic techno house records ever released. Leaving the artist side of becoming of the music industry, John decided to start investing into the business. I'm gonna get into that with him. However, Final Scratch, which then turned into Traktor DJ, Beatport, Splice, and a lot of other music industry business. John has achieved a lot of things, and I really just wanted him to get him on the podcast and have a proper conversation about it. As he admitted, his question answering can be aloof, and I love this about him. It was just an amazing dialogue that I had with him. So without further ado, John Acquaviva. John, we are live. How are you doing?
I'm great. Happy to be chatting with you, Will.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Where in the world are you right now?
I just flew back to my flat in Ibiza to
Nice.
soak in the last of the October sun. It's still pretty lovely here. I was actually in England this weekend, which is
Oh,
kind of
nice.
rare for me. I was in Oxford, so it's quite an ironic confluence of events, which caused quite a singularity.
Did you end up
You
did you
talk
end
about
up going
that
to ADE?
later. I mean, it's a little gossipy, I suppose, but
Did you end up going to ADE?
yes, I did. I have a voracious appetite. I eat everything I can when it's on the buffet.
How was ADE for you?
It was intense. We fit a whole week into 48 hours, as we
Yeah.
do, since I had to run off. It was good. I mean, I was talking to a number of people. It depends on the context. I may have missed one. I don't think so, but I've been going forever. So
Mm,
some of my younger friends were saying it was. I mean, it was just overly good, much like festivals or clubs. It just. I think they oversold. They opened the floodgates, so to speak, and oversold, and a lot of people were frustrated. And I heard that they, paid a fair fee and they had to queue in line and not everyone got into their favorite talks. So
yeah.
you wonder why podcasts are popular, right? But it's unfortunate because, if we're on the promotion side, we always want, obviously, to oversell it, but
As
or
many
an
people,
airline.
yeah.
But we got to think of the value we give. There's a company out of England, dear friends, sorry, Mark Milligan at Media Research, and they were talking at last IMS about the price elasticity of our world, and
Mm.
it's certainly at a breaking point. But I
Yeah,
mean,
what's your thoughts on that? Because I think
what on elasticity or?
on the price of the scene and where we're kind of moving over the last
Well,
like
I'm a little
especially after
spoiled.
COVID.
I'm a little spoiled, having been in the industry a long time. So I'll say it the nice way. I feel like a courtesan of clubbers. So
Mm,
obviously, what a privilege it is to not pay for almost anything. Um, but what I hear
yeah.
from my friends, it's frustrating. Look, Ibiza has 5 sets of tickets or wristbands. People are oversold. It's look. I love the future, living in the moment, but I remember the past, and I come from a world where it's a triangle. At least as a DJ, good club, good venue, good sound,
Yeah.
and we're off the rails. I also joke DJing is like Tour de France. It's funny that our little industry has the highest social numbers. I think everyone's juicing. Let's be honest. That's why I said it's the Tour de France. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, but it's ever since COVID, the the events that can get it grabbed it. And now the reality is it's feast or famine, right? Well, I also come from a time when there was talk of a long tail. As an independent underground guy, having started off with Rich Houghton, doing a kind of a culty label in the eyes of some of the bigger world, we were part of that long tail, and we traveled a long way to meet kindred freaky spirits like us.
Yeah.
And the internet doesn't allow, and that's also the fault of the people. For those of you listening, I will admit that I try to ask the best question, but I'm a lazy bastard. When I ask a question of a search engine, I kind of get the answer I want, but no one ever goes to the second page. Remember in the day we would
Mm,
go and dig deeper? Now we're just
yeah.
like spoon fed. So here's the problem: it's a logarithmic scale. The biggest number one is 10 times bigger than number two, and there's nothing for the middle.
Yeah.
I'm a good capitalist, but I think our world is community. I care when I speak at conferences or when I mentor companies that, the concept of 1,000 fans, can a
Yeah.
middle class artist, emerging artist, somehow understand who their fans are and not gouge them for a million euro lottery ticket win putting out an NFT a few years ago. It's about building a base that will provide you constant stream of income, be it merch,
Mm.
a piece of vinyl, and some shows. Can you make 100 euros out of 1,000 fans? That's 100,000. So calling me crazy, I was cursed with the ability of I mastered 10 numbers at a young age. Took me a long time to master the permutations of 26 letters, at least in this English alphabet.
No, I guess the thing is it's actually really interesting you bring up like Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans because I harp on about that
Yeah,
my whole life.
yeah.
Um, the thing for me is we live in this world of numbers that are just not necessarily true. And I think we live by, oh, everything has to sell out. You need this amount of followers, you need this amount of monthly listeners, you need this, and this. But realistically, not all of those actually mean you have a successful business in the industry.
Right. I mean, I already answered this. Well, DJing is like the Tour de France. We have the highest numbers, social numbers, than other genres. What does that mean? Well, again, I studied statistics. I did like actually numerical methods. The cat the bird is out of the bag or whatever the cliche is. So
Yeah.
when I speak at AI panels, with marketing people telling me about AIs, I actually am cursed with polynomial variable data mathematics background, and I can do calculus, both social and actually mathematical. So you can figure out by statistical regression how much people lie. So when companies approach me as a VC, oh, we've got so and so as a ambassador, and they've got whatever 2 million fans. You go there and they have 300 comments. Well,
Yeah.
either that is the lamest 2 million fanship on earth, or the numbers align.
Mm,
What are the percentages of conversion, of comments, of engagement? Right? It's easily, you don't even need to have an app to figure it out. So it's super quick when you're doing the capitalist poker on this. To figure out people's tells from one number, and you can extrapolate. But maybe I digress. But yeah, so it's unfortunate because we no longer, the core of our music is a growing consumer society that has been indoctrinated into their cults or their strata of sound,
yeah.
to speak like a macro sort of economist and philosopher. And there you go. It's not that not interesting or exciting.
No, I guess the thing for me on that though, starting out as a new artist nowadays, does that just make it even harder than previously?
It does. It does, because the barrier to entry is not just the difficulty in cracking the algorithm, as everyone kind of knows, but
Mm,
they change, and they whether it's Apple changing some of the context for the App Store, and some of our companies were affected, or just the way an algorithm changes, right, to just kind of lop off certain people. Um, but it's the cost.
yeah.
It's quite disingenuous. People wake up, you post your photos, they're technically owned by that social site, and it gleans all it can from all you say, and you have to pay for it. So
Yeah.
isn't it funny that the free internet, not only, you have become the product, but now the free internet is making you pay if you want to use. So the cost of entry. So actually, to play the game, to make six figures, you need an agent, and these are like chicken and the egg. They're like conundrums, and that you're not big enough to go to a good agency. A bunch of pretend people say they've got a company, or an app. You pay some money, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So I pity people. Sadly, I was alive when, well, I felt it was late in the game, but we were good enough that people talked about us. And, I've withdrawn from the scene per se, not retired, because I just, people are like, oh my God, you only have 20, whatever, something thousand followers. I'm like, wow, I used to be famous. I think I had 300,000 on Facebook. And in MySpace, I was a big deal. Who cares? It
Yeah,
doesn't matter what my numbers are. If I was good for 30 years and, search the internet for John Acquaviva fucks up, it's just
yeah.
so, but it sucks when an artist who has, a grassroots level, plays a little bar, a one testimonial is buried in a jetsam and flotsam of crap, false likes and filters, and videos tweaking buttons instead of playing a song.
Yeah. I guess for me, the question for you is,
Sure.
at what point did you realize it was going this way, and at what point were you like, I'm out?
Well, I'm not out because
No, you're not
I'm still,
out, because I
but
know you're in it. I know you're in it in a lot of ways,
well,
but
yeah,
to
yeah.
that
So
to that
what a
sense,
pleasure that I had a sense of my mortality and foresight to maybe be here today or in the future. Well, let's use a great example in Ibiza, since well, look, I might as well mention the name because it was public knowledge. So, I used to work with Ibiza Global Radio. They had some change of owners and visions and plans. So I think they were the sponsor for a party to start the year,
yeah,
and music event, rave, depending what term you want, and they had a good lineup. But one slot was available. Anyone coming to Ibiza for 5,000 euros, you could have a DJ slot on the rave, and they'll get the whole package. I mean, what a great marketing opportunity, right? To become a middle class DJ, being featured in Ibiza at an important event only for the price of 5,000 euros. So I can't afford to be a DJ anymore if I have to pay 5,000 instead of make 5,000. So maybe I've just got, hang-ups and hard feelings, and maybe I just, so to me, I mean, we just kind of, a bottle of whiskey and vitamins just won't do to get over that one for me. I mean, I used to be a contender.
it's very strange, right? Is
There are other cases, but I think that sums it up. I mean, maybe I just got hard feelings that I'm not famous anymore.
do you though? And I think that's the question: is, do
No,
you have hard feelings because you're
no,
not where
no.
you're at? You've
I'm here with
achieved.
my feather and my jungle motifs. I've got a menagerie of fantasy in my house. I don't need the actual recognition and fame.
What point did you in your life did you get to the point where you realized that you don't need that?
That I don't.
Need that, the
I
recognition,
love
the
music more than ever. Just most of it's not electronic. In fact, even the island of Ibiza, I love electronic music. But right now, this kind of arguably third generation of artists, uh, I'm all about first principles. I'm easily frustrated or snobby towards, you know, uh, you know, people using samples that are samples of samples and not
yeah,
knowing where things came from.
yeah,
It's okay. It's all Soylent Green to me if you get the dystopian metaphor. And it doesn't matter because I still love a musician who is a virtuoso. Or let me throw in, let me throw in what I did in Oxford this weekend. I went and saw Peter Hook. I forget his formal name, but obviously from New Order and Joy
yeah.
Division. They started with all their electronic music and they ended with the Joy Division tracks. Wow, how cathartic to hear punchy, real sound. And he did it backwards. So, us techno people, we get credit, but maybe Kraftwerk, but boy, what an important band. I had a Nirvana moment listening to Joy Division, if you pardon the pun and irony, and a band that was the intellectual darlings of artists who express themselves through the medium of music. I may write an article on this, right? But now everyone wants to use the medium of music to convey and convince people they're an artist. To me, at this stage, um, let me continue to be sardonic, maybe. I just can't compete with such pretty young things.
Yeah.
I don't want to. It's a turnoff. So it was so cathartic. They did all of their electronic songs and people got it. But they were singing to the converted, 1,000 people. But fuck, was it good to hear guitars and raw energy in your face and lyrics that challenged your. I just want to be in a good spot. I'm in the moment and I'm really happy, or I'm in the zone. And it's like every little zone is super, super small. When I eat, people like ask me, what do you like? Well, do I eat meat every day? I love meat, but I love fish and I love legumes. So I love music that much. And I need music every day of my life to survive and soothe and feed my soul. And one thing is I can't eat McDonald's every day, and that's what each genre is. It's more Soylent Green to me. No hard feelings. I'm just saying. It's just.
No, I think there's a point to what you're saying, and obviously you're allowed your opinion, and I respect that totally. But I think if I'm regurgitating what you say, you're turning. You feel like the industry is very throwaway.
I'm opining since we're having a public forum, and I do speak publicly. So sometimes it's not like I can tell you also great anecdotes. But since we're talking about the music industry, I'm happy to be provocative when I'm on stage. Or, hey, kids, think about this, right? So, I do tend to believe this, but for the sake of the argument, I 100% believe this to be not provocative, but have a conversation, because a lot of people are like, well, I can tell you tricks on how to massage your numbers so that you don't get caught in statistical regression. I'm but clearly I'm stupid to have never been that much more famous. It doesn't turn me on gaming a system. I'm more of a, altruistic and I'm actually here's a joke. I'm artistic with a soft R.
Is it ever gaming the system though? Like, I think there's a level of you can fake your numbers, you can fake everything, but you can not even make your own music. But realistically, at the end of the day, I think authenticity shines through.
You're right. I can't argue with that, because authenticity, and look, if you're at least good, whatever, by hook or by crook or by talent, there's a reason why you'll kind of rise up. So I can't argue that. You got to have some level of skill, but you can polish. You can some things to me with my specific taste still sounds and looks like lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it, and I think
this is for people listening. We're having conversation. Like, I miss curation in a consumer world, right? Like, I miss the time when I go to a store and I trusted 3 guys at a store who made me a better DJ. Going, I listened to 50, and John, you better get these 10 records. I'm like, you got taste. Damn right, I'm going to get those 10 records.
Yeah.
As opposed to, can I have 100 Tech House records? Just whatever. I just need 100.
Yeah. But I that's what I'm trying to dig into. At what point in, not necessarily in your life, but in the industry, did you feel that change?
Well, I think we, just like we say, before Christ and after Christ in our Western Catholic world, I think we could also say, before COVID and after COVID. So, I mean, how I don't believe in heroes or anything, or monarchy or religion. So what a lovely metaphor, right?
Yeah.
COVID, how ideological is that? So I think it's fair. You can, you can't draw the line anywhere. Where did something start to happen or mutate, right? Dance
Mm,
music is dance music. I was a disco DJ before techno,
yeah,
playing
yeah,
in the 70s. I got my first number one, 1982. So, DJing, if you've done it every week or partying, is like looking in the mirror. If you look in the mirror every day, you don't see the change.
yeah,
So dance music is still dance music, except for every day I've looked in the mirror, but if I look at a photo from 5, 10, 20 years ago, I'm different. I'm the
yeah.
same but different. And that's dance music. So where do we draw the line? It's our own personal line of when did we get excited? When did we perhaps um, uh, join in the process and
Mm,
and or sometimes leave willingly or be jettisoned, you know,
yeah, yeah.
you know.
It's interesting.
So
Elements.
I'm just a provocative amateur polymath and philosophizing, but it's just like, these are conversations we need to have. There's no
No,
wrong
I
answer,
agree.
but trying to understand that perspective will help people young and old. Understanding your place in a timeline and your place, but you have to understand history to maybe understand the new moment. And maybe, as we did with our generation, with Rich Haunton and I went on to do many things, being part of that paradigm shift of analog to digital.
Yeah.
Sometimes we pick up the baton and we run with it. And I encourage people publicly, very much privately, in a much more um, passionate tones to
Yeah.
pick up that baton and show me something. I don't care.
Mm,
I'm not a guy saying, kid, in my day, like, I'm not a loser. I have no hard things, but I want, it's boot camp. I want people to try their best and not have excuses. And so we're in an interesting time, and I think it's early days post COVID, right? So this
yeah.
generation, has got a challenge. Maybe I'll throw it back. I interview people, but this is your podcast. But I saw, and we're not too familiar with each other, but I saw you were making an announcement, if I understood correct, because I'm really bad at reading socials. But like, you're not DJ, but you're doing live, correct?
Correct.
So, I'd throw that back at you, like,
Yeah.
what prompted that move? And I haven't read enough articles, but it's the same conversation,
Yeah.
right? Why
Yeah.
am I withdrawing? You and I, I'm, and I could poke you, or what
No,
argument you
totally.
could
And
have against that. You know what I mean? So we're having a good conversation for the people listening, I think, and
yeah,
sharing
no,
your
I,
honest
I
opinion.
totally agree. But I
Yeah,
think that's it. There's always valid reasons
sure.
in each decision, right? Say, for
Yeah,
instance, with me going live, that's not me quitting DJing. I love DJing, and it gives it also allows me to earn money. Like me, if I went full on live and fully gave up DJing, well, you know how much it costs to run a live show.
right.
So, but for me, it was the going live thing was purely I'm I've been doing this for a long time and I need to reinvent myself. I need to do something new.
Yeah.
I need to push things forward because for myself and for other people. Um and
Great
that's purely it.
comments. And so I started thinking of the metaphor, boy, was I thrilled, and I'm still appreciative and gracious
Mm,
of how the world took us to heart. But after I climbed my first mountain, I I may not have put a flag in it, but I saw another one, and so I had to get off that mountain to
yeah.
hopefully climb one that I still couldn't know if it was bigger or smaller, but I
Mm,
did that a few times, and I
yeah.
realized I like doing that more than sitting on the mountain and saying I'm king of the mountain. You know.
What was that other thing?
Well, very quickly for people who may know me a little, I came to the international stage by being the partner of one fellow called Richie Houghton. So I'm the other side of Plus 8 Records, which was, people tell me, pretty influential label in the 90s. And Rich and I were together. He's like, we're brothers, but we kind of had a very amicable split. I was pretty instrumental in building that label, but Rich embodies techno, and I maybe lost my focus, so I'm not wearing black today, and I have colors behind me. That's all good. So what a great community. So if anything, I'm the older brother of all these guys, and boy, am I thankful at
Mm,
that moment of my life. But then um, I went on DJ wise. I had my most success after breaking up with Rich because he went on to do minimal music, which amazing,
yeah.
and that. affected Marco Corolla to be the man who he is. It's like just everything's a massive story.
Of course.
I went on to do Electro House. I felt like Goldilocks. Techno's too hard, house is too cheesy, and I went back to basics, which is a club I used to play in the '90s with Ralph Lawson and
Yeah.
2020 Vision. Beautiful guys. These are the people I love from the scene. I don't care about the famous DJs. I love those warriors, those masters of the club, and then I was friends with the guys at Classic. I would be very close. I was using the same booking agent. So Electro House for 2 years was great, and then I realized, oh my god, this will be hijacked. And I just kind of turned my back on it. I went into self-imposed exile as an artist, but I was pretty trendy. So then at the same time, I discovered a technology called Final Scratch, which became Traktor Scratch, which was the first digital hardware controller of a then not profitable software company out of Berlin called Native Instruments. So I consider that a footnote in history. We had an incredible relationship. If you dig deep past the first 10 pages, we had a lawsuit that there's no details, but we disagreed on how the things work. But in between, that technology, all the while Pioneer had brought CDJs to pretty much perfection finally on digital files. There was an issue with digital files, and I cared not to play bootleg files, because foolish me, I would buy records. I support the industry, much like it supported me. So I came together and founded a company called Beatport, which still resonates to this day. So those are like my two chip. If I did nothing else in my life, I could go to clubs and get free drinks for that mostly. So I sold that in 2013. I opened a private equity fund with my other managing partner, Rishi Patel, but Rich Haunton. We put as the chairman. So we were early investors in Splice, in Lander, but also creative. So and hence I do keynotes. I talk at bars for drinks, or vent my frustrations on special invitations. I don't do a lot of this, but I was really excited to have vent my feelings. If you ask the right questions, and you're provoking me today, sir.
No, I think it's actually really interesting, and
so
and like
that gives a context of me being a know-it-all, or I have a strong opinion. It doesn't matter; it's just my opinion. But I've done stuff, so there's sometimes weight to it. I may be wrong about the future, but
no, I really appreciate it, and this is why I wanted to get you on, because not obviously at all. I knew your history, and I knew what you've done in the industry, and I didn't want to go straight in on that, but I think for me, for people listening on this, it's actually really interesting to see somebody that's had an extremely successful career in music, and then kind of switched that into an extremely successful career in music, but in the music business.
Thank you.
And I think what I'm having more and more conversations on this podcast about is that there's actually other ways to generate revenue in the music business, in the music industry.
So let's claw this back a little bit.
Yeah.
We were talking about artists trying to make a living. So I fought long and hard before we opened the virtual doors to Beatport, being an amateur economist. And I believe in creating royalty. I've always hunted people down, paid them royalties. We do publishing admin. I have a lot of companies.
Totally.
I was adamant that the company was viable, but also that it paid artists. So we did a 60-40 split, and we quickly evolved to exclusivity for 2.5 units of currency.
Yeah.
But so 2.5 units of currency, Beatport would get $1. And people, you're taking 40%. It's not fair. But wait a minute. Let's do the math. If you sell a track without policing, DRM and shit, high quality, I don't care. You gave me $2.50. I don't care. Once you have a receipt, you can download it as many times as you want. You can use it because you paid $2.50. And we created more per unit royalty. I'd like to take credit for that because I cared. So when we're talking about, 1,000 fans, if you are an underground person with talent, instead of buying shit, social adverts, make a nice track. The track will rise above instead of releasing 10 pieces of shit that you cajole your mother and friends to buy for 10 downloads. Be honest with yourself. You might release one or two, but if you're only selling 10, there's a song by the Stranglers called Get a Grip on Yourself. It may be very unpalatable to electronic people because it has guitars in it. But the Stranglers is like, the money's no good. You know, you want to be in a rock and roll band to get laid and be famous. Get a grip on yourself. But the true artist, take comfort knowing that with every step of understanding you have in the business and you make something from your heart, some people will notice. And that's how you build if you want to be around for a long time. So, you know, to end that story, if you have 1,000 downloads and you're the label or you're distributor, but even 1,000 downloads exclusivity, you know, at the 250 value, that's $1,500. You know what? I have no hangups about being super famous. I've actually got some gold records and stuff, but I have no aspirations to have millions of streams. I'm just not that palatable to people because I'm my own man. I have no hard feelings. I don't care. But when you sell 10,000, you start to become, you know, an independent artist. Now the money's a little lower, but whether it's Bandcamp or Beatport or you're gonna make $5,000-$10,000.
Yeah.
Fuck the million streams, people. Believe in yourself, bet in yourself. So I think we've circled that square, you know? So
Totally.
there is hope, people. It's called stick to the things you love and know better and better and better by playing a little bit, by releasing a little bit. You will make, hopefully, tens of thousands of dollars, and maybe share it with a person or two that you grow together who might help you manage. But dirty little secret, people, I foolishly had to wake up early and manage myself. Now, I'm cursed with the ability to add and subtract, and there's only 10 numbers. So I just take that for granted because I'm really good at it, and no matter what state I'm in. But it's not that difficult, people, if you care and be focused. So, you know, we're not at the end of the world. You know, we're not. And stick to the things that afford and allow for you. That's where my head was at. That's where I put my money, and that's where we created money. And I took a slice of that pie. You know, some people are so smart that I'm so smart, I'm going to fuck you all because you're stupid fucking artists. Well, I met people like that when I was a young artist. I never thought I was stupid. I just had to wake up and do a little bit more work. You know, if I can do it, I'm just a stupid fucking DJ. You too can do it. Not you, my friend, but you know, I'm talking out there to all the bedroom DJs. So you know, look at me. I'm a disaster. You know.
So let's go back to the early days of Beatport.
Sure.
What was the concept? What, like, at what point, what were you seeing in the change in the industry that you were like, okay, well, this is the one?
The guys with the original idea, Jonas Temple, Eloy Lopez, and Brad Roulier, it's like, you know, Final Scratch is amazing. Do you have content? I'm like, well, no, I have to kind of record my vinyls, and it's tedious. Well, you know, it's a good time that we do something, you know, and aggregate content. I'm like, talk to me. Within 2 months, we're like, let's do this. Let's do this. And then Beatport really captured, but it was on the shoulders, right, of the past. People are having a hard time finding records that were costing much more than $10 or £10, right? Imports. So it was already 10, sometimes 15. So look, I was friends with a lot of the local DJs traveling the world. Of course, I had all the records. I had the money. I had the contacts. I was, you know, we're icons of the business in the eyes of many. So I also spent money. You know, I did not play only promos like some famous DJ. Talk about not investing in your, you know, repertoire. I would spend €1,000 and I could afford to. But it's a virtuous circle, right? We invest and we hope that people spend on us in a perfect world. But everyone started playing free files. And bedroom DJs playing free files, well, good luck with that, right? So you have to aspire a little better. So if people are paying €10, instead of this caste system or this hierarchy of superstars have their shit reserved if they buy records, but they come once a month. I was one of those top guys. Save me 100 records, I'm going to buy 80 of them. Of course, you know. So, but others couldn't, and they'd have to wait months. So Beatport brought everyone up to speed on a release. And instead of printing, say, 500 records or 1,000 or 5,000 of something good, and we've sold hundreds of thousands of records. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, in a way, I almost killed that. It doesn't matter. Someone would have done it. I'm glad I did it. It's not
I
my
was about to say
problem.
that.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
look, I was a great horse rider, but I saw the car. Why wouldn't I have invested in a car? Or
Yeah.
actually, I dreamed up the car. It doesn't matter. So that's really important. So it wasn't hard for the people desperately famished to have access to music. The people who were the real heart and soul, the local residents, the national DJs, the ones in South America, Asia, they're all different kinds of music, but they didn't have to wait 3 months and be like, sorry, it's sold out. You're not, so it exploded and it was the right time. Now, I wasn't that clever by design, but all of my attempts to understand the past, um, to do the right thing, to create royalty and not bring it to zero in a capitalist world, because the smart people crush the middle people. Why the do I need you? You know,
Yeah.
it's called an app. I don't need workers. No, I think that's cynical. And so here you go. I think a little bit of understanding, and you kind of figured it out. And then we realized, well, wait, we were the biggest company, and then we're like, well, let's do exclusive, because instead of $1.50 or $2, give us 4 weeks. We paid more per unit royalty, so we had the
Yeah.
exclusive, and man, we made a lot of money. We were turning over a lot of money. We
Yeah.
sold for, unlike my friends who had dream companies worth billions, I only sold the company, public record, for just under 70 million. So still working class, and we had to share with a few people. So
What a
here I am,
shame. What a shame.
we'll work for food and drink. I mean, look, and so whatever. So you're never clever by design, but if you kind of work towards doing something with a sense of viability.
Mm.
I mean, also, I'll be a little bit like an athlete. I'm just blessed to have been there, and I thank God, and all that stuff. We worked hard. We argued a lot,
Of course.
but there you go. We distilled it, right? That creative crucible of how does this work? It needs to work. Let's not be idiotic, you know.
When does access to music become where the music becomes where the art itself becomes too devalued?
Well, it's more the way. So really, music is like an abusive family.
Mm.
A lot of us talk that we need to do better, and we don't need this toxicity, but people still do the things that hurt them. I, you know, I don't sleep anyway, so I can't be melodramatic. I lost a lot of sleep caring, but I do lose a lot of sleep with pleasure, wanting to make something that works as
Yeah.
opposed to a pipe dream. We can talk about, and I worked effortlessly. Sometimes I do, I was on the executive of the AFEM. I try to support bodies. I'll speak at conferences, and put those thoughts on, viability, right? Viability, because people selling an idea that they have no idea how it might work, but they need millions of dollars, like get it, again, the stranglers, get a grip on yourself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I guess, is there a point, or we're at that point now, where art is so devalued?
A very important article by Media Research that was presented um, verbally by Mark was the bifurcation of society. Our consumer culture will continue to grow, but it's
Yeah.
consumer culture. So
Hmm.
I think in my stock portfolio, I think I own McDonald's. Ask me if
Yeah.
I eat there. I know that it's an efficient meal for people. I make more effort to go to the market, or I just feel that I have a different standard. But like, consumer music is okay, but it's a dangerous thing because it's feast or famine.
Yeah.
But for those people who are their own person and they start to create an identity, I'm not John Acquaviva, 299. I'm an individual, except I have to number myself 299 out of all the John Acquavivas in the world. There's less, but you know what I mean? We're all individuals, but we're doing the same thing. So some artists are truly individual. You want to maybe build on the writers, musicians. We can get into AI. You as a person, what you study, you're a product of your past, right? and your environment. I can tell, Richie Houghton, if I'm a critic, I would say, wow, he's kind of like the son of Kraftwerk. He's cold, he's machine-like, mechanical. Oh, that didn't happen by accident. We hung out with them. We understand, and I understand that cold, sometimes ghost in the machine value to really stripped down electronic music. But he's Richie Houghton. He's
Yeah.
not a Kraftwerk derivative, right? So as he started making an impact, iconically, musically, when I would get a demo that sounded like Plastic Man, I binned it. I have Plastic Man. Why would I
Yeah.
want Plastic Man 2?
Yeah.
Like, but man, we found original people. A guy called Joachim Pap. I remember the first time I got Joachim Pap, I'm like, Rich, damn, I think this guy's more talented than we are. I can't believe we got a demo. This guy is like holy crap. And
Yeah.
what a lucky and A&R find that was. I admit it that someone was brilliantly talented, and I put him on the label, and the rest is also history, But
Yeah.
he was his own man. We discovered a lot of people. We also worked with a lot of people who wanted to work with us, but we did not do a lot of derivative work because that was Rich. I had to argue with him for 10 years about doing a remix. It's okay to have a remix. And we sold like 300,000 pullover 12 inches and about 2 million compilations, and we made six figures finally to get out of debt. What's wrong with remixing a hit?
Yeah.
Well, that's not cool. No, you're wrong. We have to make more money on this. So I've had my battles trying to be a capitalist.
But I also I love that though, because I think there's with, and please don't be offended by this, and
No.
I'm not saying this, but with Richie being the quintessential true artist in how you're describing, right? To have, I believe, to have extreme success financially, you need someone like yourself where they can push back on, this is what you
Well,
have, this is what could work, this is what you
well,
should be
for
doing,
lack
or
of a
potentially.
cheeky metaphor, we amicably divorced um, end of the 90s. He has a great team. Ben
Yeah,
Turner, who is
the
another
best.
incredible person. So Ben Turner, managing Rich, in private, I always tell all my brothers what I think. But boy, what a great team they are. Ben has done great things business wise, but also for the industry with him
Yeah,
putting together IMS, the Association for Electronic Music, in tandem with Kurosh Nusseri, a very dear friend. There's a lot of altruism in our group and arguing that goes, but I kind of walked away. I'm an iconoclast, so I don't really care about how an icon is managed, but compliments. And again, I'm not here to critique Rich, but there's a lot of reasons that are commendable, and I'm happy to opine as a critic. There's a lot of good reasons on how he got there, and
yeah,
one of the biggest ones is Ben Turner. So
yeah,
what a great group of guys, and I'm so proud of my family because we celebrate at family dinners. Sometimes we squabble, but we really care,
mm,
about whether it's taking all we can off the table or sowing the seeds, and
yeah.
it's a combination of that. So, but we can do a whole segment. Maybe one day I'll interview him and I'll just be like, really like, was that show on BBC where I'm
Hard.
just going to interrogate him and call him out?
So I want to go back to your what you're saying about samples and sampling.
Yeah.
You being an investor in Splice, and
Yeah.
kind of Splice being the point where literally there's Sabrina Carpenter is using Splice samples on #1 US chart records. What do you think Splice has had what impact do you think Splice has had on the industry?
Look, it's the product the marketplace wanted. A lot of my more nerdy engineer friends, they either buy the sample pack immediately and
Yeah,
are the first to use a sample, and other people use a sample. You know what? In the history of music, every new piece of equipment used had presets, and the presets were pretty good.
yeah,
And people who had no idea how to use them used presets and they made hits. One of the
yeah,
greatest early examples is Timmy Thomas with a little rhythm box.
yeah.
I mean, an organ box. I don't know which one, but like it was that simple. Or a
Mm-hmm.
CR78, right? Blondie, Heart of Glass. It's a damn preset on the Roland. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
They caught the zeitgeist of a new pack of sound. The marketplace needs new sounds, whether they're derivative or not. And now that, well, no one's that this intellectual, but well, if you got, 1,000 things, the permutations of 1,000 things are limitless, but
Yep.
actually they're not. They're the same. So we're getting into this philosophical conundrum, or where do we draw that line, that intellectual line, that creative line, right? It doesn't matter. Just like I said, I probably own stocks in McDonald's. I would tell you, if we're talking about food, like, don't take me to McDonald's or Starbucks. But I'm not stupid to know that it's convenient and profitable. So I mean, so I see where the marketplace is going, or we see as a group, and we foster that. We can all use the tools at hand in the way we want, and sometimes using a tool, maybe it's playing a guitar upside down left-handed, or being slidexic, which is another great joke, right? The dyslexic people do things differently. And I get easily bored. So I sometimes want to break things or do them sideways. Rich certainly did. A lot of early electronic people was like, well, let's take a Merlin. So that, Sweet Exorcist, the guys at Warp were having records made with child toys. And boy, were they fun. And we did the same. Like, we wired up a Merlin because I wanted to, play the five tones. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah.
or a Texas Instruments speak and spell. So um, a lot of it is childish fun, and sometimes we we mess it up. That's okay, But I can be an intellectual, and I love classical music. I can get on about my favorite recordings of Eric Satie, where there's time and space and no autocracy of rhythm.
But
So
I guess, do you think Splice has messed up the industry?
it's not for me to say. I just put it out there. It's not for me to say if my paradigm shift, if in hand with Pioneer CDJs. Look, I'm also I'm technically not incompetent. I'm very
Yeah.
competent as an artist. I know how to read and make music, not as good as, but I'm a pretty good turntablist, if I may be so humble. And doesn't matter. Some of my friends are like, yeah, it's not like the old days. Like, look, I was tired of going to a club. I was bringing my own cartridges. I
Yeah.
dequartz my turntables. I had perfect turntables at home at my clubs. I go somewhere and the shit was a disaster,
Hmm.
and the shit's skipping, and that's not cool.
Yeah.
The greatest turntablist in the world still looks unprofessional when people are jumping on a floor, that's floor beams that are, what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
fuck,
Yeah.
it's too much grief.
So moving forward into the world of music, into your life,
Yeah.
what's exciting you the most at this moment in time? What's kind of like really taking your fancy?
Um, Life. I traveled a long way to meet a few interesting characters. I continue to do so. Um, it's funny. One of my tennis partners, I didn't know he was for the longest time. He's a very dear friend, a guy called Seamus Morley, like managing above and beyond and left
Yeah.
fielder to some degree. So I meet him finally after a year and a half of tennis, and we go out. And the most interesting thing he said before I figured out who he was, and we all kind of knew didn't matter. I liked the guy as a person, right? He's like, I just found a treasure trove of African music from the 70s and 80s. I'm like, that is amazing. You're the coolest guy. So I'm excited that my friend is excited. He's got a lot of industry cred.
Yeah.
And look, I come from a different tribe, which is why we kind of didn't really. It doesn't matter. I love it when my friends have that passion. So we'll listen to shit, and it's not electronic. I'm like, I want to hear some of this unearthed shit because I travel the world. And I want to hear this stuff. So I get excited by food. I get excited by music. Something that is like allowing something original, to be put at least somewhere that maybe it can be found and appreciated. Beauty for me is is something that is not cloned, right?
Mm.
So when it comes to music, my definition of beauty is pretty much predicated on something that is not cloned, right?
Mm.
So a great musician and I'll go on and play great musicians of their generation or ours. Not every generation is better per se,
I
but
agree
that's
with that.
that's for critics to decide, and we can compare. But and right now, all these electronic people, I can talk to you where it came from, because I could tell you about how DJing mixed and evolved from my circle of teachers in Toronto. We were the highest paid. They were just so successful. There, my under I was the understudy. I was the last in line of four, but he got a full time job in Toronto. 1982, was making $2,500 a, a week. So my mentor was making $125,000 a year as a DJ. So I was going to school. I can just tell you, people, without bragging, I learned from great masters who are maybe not famous because they didn't have to make records. They were actually getting paid to play them. But they were technically amazing and they made money. And this is how I could afford a studio. I was making very good money. At
Yeah.
one point, I was making $2,000 a night. So when raves happen, I'm like, "Hey, you want to pay for 500?" I'm like, I don't like to play a dirty warehouse. I prefer some champagne and some cool music. But I also had that edge that wanted me to go out. So, but you know, there were pockets. My guys, Toronto's a rich city. It's not a well kept secret anymore. Toronto is not poor, and it's a great entertainment city. Was again, I'll challenge the current generation to step it up. But Toronto, for generations, was everything. We could buy the Italo house, all the gay house. We had disco. We had music from Florida. So when I bought the record collections of all my friends, I had some New York stuff. So I bought collections from 5, 6 places. Whereas you talk to someone who grew up in the silo, with all, not just being disrespectful, but DJs from most places are DJs from most places, and they have their tribe's sound.
Yeah.
What luck that my friend was playing, getting so much money, playing a club of 1,500 people when people were still in the cultural stone age of like bad sounding. Montreal's another great city. I mean, for
It's
any
an
of
amazing
you who've
city.
been there, I was part of a group. I bought a Tiga share in Sona. We were doing 3,000 people a weekend. We did 4 parties of over 10,000 people, and this is in the year 2000. So again, people, get a grip. I knew magic when it was there, and I was so, yeah, what great memories. And it's not a sense of pride, it was just satisfaction that I was able to be there and sometimes jump on those buses, as a resident and then as an owner, because I faked my way pretending I could do shit with money, but I was,
And did it. And did it.
rightly or wrongly. But I'm in looking back, I succeeded more than I failed, and that's kind of difficult. So I don't know what was in my water or where I got my tenacity. But all joking aside, and that's why I'm busy writing books. I welcome the occasional conversation. I'm so glad we spoke today, and we are connected now. And I was so thankful that Jazz, hooked me up. I was like, really, really got to get to know Will and do it. Trust me. And I didn't send my team to research you. I mean, friends are friends, and recommendations are recommendations. So thank you for taking the chance on me. But what a pleasure to be talking to you.
No, I really.
Hendrik, I gave you a lot of shit. I pushed back, and I maybe didn't fight with you on when I asked you the one question. So I let you be yourself on that one.
You can fight with me whenever you want. It's
Okay,
absolutely fine.
virtually. All right.
Um, I kind of want to go back slightly a
Sure.
little bit. Elements of Tone. I want to talk about this record.
Sure.
Was it 1990 or 1991?
We pressed them in 1990, and we went to New Music Seminar with Elements of Tone, States of Mind, and Kenny Larkin. So we did 1 and 2. The original records had etchings. I wrote messages to my future self. I did weird things. I was more that one because I was a collector.
What was one of the
Well, I
messages?
did something silly like, "Oh, praise the lords of acid" or something. I don't know. I was coming out of a phase. So my future self, well, I'm naturally psychedelic, so I remember what I meant by that. And then on the Kenny Larkin one that I produced, and I wanted to be a producer, so it was my studio, but Kenny got full credit, and that's one of the reasons why we're good friends now. But I'm like, I foolishly, he wrote 100% of the song, even though it was my studio. But anyways, I wrote on that
Not
one.
bitter at all.
Not at all. I did well. I care for Kenny. I mean, I
I
have
love
many
Kenny.
fond memories. I'm
Kenny's
just
great.
saying, for for historical reference. And so on that one, I wrote, "Don't step on the cracks of society," like Devo, step on the crack because
Yeah.
don't step on the cracks of society. Search them out and jump in. And here I am.
Here you are.
What was your question about elements of tone? I already had admitted. So we actually, it was a Roland SH202,
Yeah.
and we were playing the beeps because we wanted to do the Sheffield sound. What more do you want to know? Because I could tell you all the mistakes I made that blew people
Tell
apart.
me them all.
So,
Because I think for me is like
okay.
from the work from the tiny bit of research that I went back on looking. Was this your first ever techno release?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's my first. Yeah. For let's not go there.
For Pete's sake.
So
Yeah, yeah.
so elements of tone. I was influenced by Sheffield, but going back, other band from Sheffield, one of the hottest mastered records and sounds of all time was Human League.
Yeah.
Hard Times, Love Action was one of the fattest masterings ever. When I bought that as a young kid, I'm like, oh my God, they're like, so loud. And so I had the pleasure of meeting Phil Oakey, but I got to know Rob Mitchell, who passed away. I used to be really close, and I would do a lot of stuff with him. And I've since met the guys. We worked with them, but I'm like, man, this fat sound. And then I connected the dots when I met Phil Oakey. Like, there's some guy in Sheffield who knows how to really cut records, And so I'm like, so I had a Kai 1212, and I'm kind of learning for over a couple of years. So I had a Kai 1212 master tape machine. Just kind of a quirky little thing, but that's what I had. And so it had parametric EQs. So the first two records before Cybersonic, because I was like learning how to engineer, I was
Yeah.
good, but I didn't know how to really mix and actually record. So I stupidly figured out by talking to a few people that I wanted to use the parametric EQ, to highlight the frequency, which then
Yeah.
was not really a really nice mesh, right? We don't. This is the days, so it's just like you have pockets, right? And so I wanted everything to pop, and I would listen to it on two stereos, and I would play, out loud. It was raw, but I'm like, okay, we
Super.
got to press this record eventually. That was the longest record we ever worked on because I was never happy, and I just knew there was some, hadn't figured it out. And I did it for Kenny Larkin too. So what I did is I recorded everything with the EQ I wanted, and then, so big mistake. But then on the mixdown, I once again re-EQ'd it. So I super popped all my pockets to the point that I would never buy those records.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but people are, you guys are crazy. Like it's thinking like we're, as artists, we're pushing the parameters.
Pushing the
Like
boundaries.
I'm a genius, right? But look, there you go. I figure things out, but to be honest, like I'm just making shit up.
Just fucking winging it.
And the old analog boards, obviously redlining. I'm a big fan of redlining. I found my saturation points, but those records, painful. So I learned a little better, having talked to people going, you're crazy. And some people like, I can't believe the genius of like you, like, what did you do? Yeah, I like double parametric EQ'd it, man, like in our pocket. But wow, that's really audacious. I'm like, whatever words people would use then. And then the third one, I'm like, well, we made Technarchy. And I'm like, okay, what the hell were people trying to tell me? Like, but Technarchy got a little bit better. It still sounds like a raw industrial record. But when I heard the white level, I'm like, damn,
Yeah.
I would buy this. And I knew that maybe, like the song Flowers by Echo and the Bunnymen, I knew it. I finally felt I was there. I made a record that I would buy. And you know what? Other people did a lot of it. It was a lot of I'm like, oh my God, I just like people like treating us. I'm like, oh my God, am I really in the music business? Because I'm making this shit up. And then I got pretty good as an engineer until we got successful and someone had to manage the circus. So people don't think of me as a producer, although I've had a lot of productions and I've actually had a lot of hits. And what I did is I sold my studio at the end of that, and I started working with people. I'm one of the few people who has never paid a ghostwriter. Stupid me. Not sometimes I gave people 100%, hoping that people would think I'm a good real producer, or stupid me, I shared the credits and split 50-50. How dumb am I?
Very.
I mean, I should be talking about myself and not the people who helped me, or together we made some great records, some timeless, some not. Doesn't matter. But I'm very happy to be part of the music business and foster that with my younger friends who deserve that attention. They're
Yeah.
great. I've worked with the best engineers. Raman Zenker. I mean, super
Wow.
hit maker, but cool as hell um, with Oliver Bonzio, whatever, the famous Heart, the acid band, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Olivia Giacomoto, who for 10 years was a golden ear. I mean,
Mm.
still genius, lovely guy. So only great moments working with all these people, and the collaborations that came of our passion and sharing and coming together. So
What was the relationship between Toronto and Detroit?
my city was smack dab in the middle, so I was like
London.
the middle point of the teeter totter. It was just like very Dickensian, a tale of two cities.
Yeah.
One was rich, one was poor, but I thrived in the rawness, and that was that dystopian techno, right?
Mm.
I was playing Cosmic Cars. I, as a fan of Kraftwerk, as a fan of electronic music, of the real electro, booty stuff from California, even like NWA, Panic Zone on their first EP was an electronic track, right?
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah,
booty.
yeah.
It was like a electro, and then Egyptian Lover, all that. I mean, I know this
Mm.
stuff inside out. I was DJing this stuff, and when I bought an 808, I knew how to do it, but I didn't have the right mixer because they had really great productions. And when you think of the history of an Egyptian Lover, NWA, there's no surprise how they took those sounds to the
Totally.
next level through NWA, through Dr. Dre, through Snoop, right? These
Mm.
guys were standing on shoulders of each other's giants, right?
So
And
for my own ego and for my own not ego at all, but for literally like my own for myself.
yeah,
I've lived in Detroit the past 7 years. I left last year, a year ago.
uh-huh.
Um, can you tell me what it was like in the early 90s? Can you like I've had DJ Bone, I've had Kevin on, like
Yeah. So
I've had a
I
lot
was
of the crew
also
on.
I also went to Dresden,
Mm,
Germany. I think it was 91, 92.
yeah.
And it really was, what, Fahrenheit 451 or whatever the hell it was. Dresden, the sister city of Detroit at the time, was
Yeah.
Dresden. Both had decades of devastation left behind.
Mm,
But it called, it was really, there's a lot of metaphors. A very old one is the Wizard of Oz. Detroit was that emerald city, and it fostered a number of musical movements. And everyone was drawn to it, not by the beauty, not by the dream. Um, it was so I stay in the old mansion of Barry Gordy where it all happened.
yeah.
My friends own it. Where Rick James was learning how to party. Diana Ross was having Barry Gordy's baby. Michael Jackson auditioned when they drove down, but Motown was amazing. Barry Gordy was a character because he didn't really help his fellow artists, but he allowed them that presence. Right, he was a notorious tough boss, and but that was it. When the riots happened, he still had a house, but they eventually all left. And then Detroit got dystopian, right?
Mm,
I mean, you can kind of, the cultural climate also dictates the kind of art.
of
So
course.
Detroit was dystopian, but I loved it. So ironically, the roads were shit,
Yeah.
So I thought, I personally took Cosmic Cars as a cultural joke, but it was a brilliant track, obviously, right?
Mm,
So you go there like Motor City, Cosmic Cars, like, yeah, they're going to need to float because they can't drive on these roads. I mean, I never did a review of the record, and I don't think that would have been, artistically appropriate to have that kind of critique. But you see where I'm going. So, and now Detroit is gentrified in a way. I support. There's a few one-off shops, but Detroit was like ground zero of a nuclear bomb.
mm.
But boy, was it fun when
But
we did.
I think that's it. Is how I guess the question is how did that affect the scene? How did that affect the music scene being
Well,
dystopian?
so because it was dystopian, my friends in Toronto were making money. So life's good when you're making money, and uh, and so I don't need to be creative because people know, and I'm getting paid a lot of money to be the man weaving a story, right? A collage of music. But we can't make money DJing, and there's a lot of Chicago guys too. But Chicago's got a history of blues guys coming up pressing records. So
Yeah.
once they started making acid house and Brits were buying it, all the guys like Armando, I used to rest his soul, Mike Dunn, Steve Poindexter, Derek Carter, I met him the first time. Like all these guys, had the dream of selling some records, but making records because that was their ticket out.
Yeah.
And I got both because I was making money, but I'm like, you know what? My ticket out to achieving the dreams I have in my head, as DJs are now starting, to mix music using samplers, maybe make music. I'm like, I have to do this because then it was, and one of the things I have not released a lot of stuff, but I have a little article I was going to release about my withdrawal. But I'm like, uh, I love dance music from an early age, much to the distress of my rock and roll friends, and increasingly music increasingly being made by drum machines. Um, I saw, I listened to Kraftwerk. I
Mm.
program my own computer, bring myself into the future by pressing down this little key, plays a little melody. I use those two quotes to start the first chapter of my book from Final Scratch that will be released soon. And the ghost of the machine led me by her hand, and I followed. You know,
Mm.
and and that's when electronic music had no boundaries and had only hope. And then, in many ways, I can wax poetically, but also dystopian. Like a lot of electronic music for me is dystopian. I don't like to follow, so I don't like to march in goose step to certain sounds.
I think that's a perfect way to end all of this.
Because
um,
because I don't mind the goosebumps of love, but no goose steps from me.
I agree.
Ha
I
ha.
agree.
You
John,
A lot of
thanks
mixed
so much for
metaphors, and
coming
I'm
on,
sorry
man.
for not giving you any clear answers whatsoever.
It's exactly what I expected, so don't worry.
All
It's
right.
fine. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I'm really interested to see this book when it's done. Please let me know.
Well, we'll have to contact you as part of the tour if I ever get a
Please
manager
do.
who'll bring some focus to my life.
I'm sure you can manage yourself. You got this.
But thank you. Thanks for giving me the platform to whine.
Nah, you're always welcome here,
Big
man. I
pleasure.
appreciate it so
Thank
much,
you.
and see you very soon. I'm sure. Big love.
Sure.
Thank you. And that's a wrap. Big love to John for coming on. Really enjoyed that conversation. Hope you guys did. Please subscribe. Please share. Please send it to your mates if you got something from this. Till next time, people.